Who's ever heard of mindfulness? Oh wow, there's a lot. Who's practiced mindfulness? Wow, there's a good number. I learned about mindfulness because it was prescribed to me. I'd never heard of it before. And my psychotherapist, when I was a student at BYU, this was a decade ago, it was prescribed to me. And I thought it was so weird. So hopefully, I mean, perhaps you might feel that way. It's a little foreign. I mean, it's new. Of course, when I was learning it, there was just cushions on the floor, and you sat in silence for a long time. We're going to try something a little different today with the raisin. What I teach is called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was created by a dude named Jon Kabat-Zinn. Anybody heard of this guy? Yeah, I don't know. He was the first guy to research mindfulness practice, meditation and yoga specifically. These studies started in like 1989. And the research started, it was comparing the effectiveness of mindfulness on recovery from injury, mental illness. And the studies were starting to be so successful that now that's kind of why mindfulness is, well, that's probably why I'm here, is because of the research that he started. So the evidence has really validated how mindfulness can be effective, especially for addiction recovery. That seems to be one of the things its specialty.
Is mindfulness and meditation the same thing?
The question is mindfulness and meditation the same thing? That's a really good question. You might consider meditation a practice of mindfulness, and mindfulness itself a way of being, where meditation might help move you towards that way of being. But of course, just raise your hand if this stops working. I keep not being able to hear myself. Good? Okay. Yeah, meditation might be considered the training wheels. But if you've ever ridden a bike, you want the training wheels off, as soon as possible, because mindfulness is a way of living life just as it is. You could be sitting here, sitting mindfully, just being present. And so meditation might be considered an efficient way to facilitate or practice helping you integrate a mindful way of living into your life. Thanks. For those of you who have an aversion to raisins, which is normal, especially when they're in cookies, that's okay. That can be part of the mindfulness exercise, because a lot of people have the misconception that what mindfulness is supposed to be is to make you love everything or something like that, or shift, slow down your thinking, still your mind. Or if you're not feeling good, you just do a little mindfulness and then you feel good. And it couldn't really be further from the case. And mindfulness is really, it's actually even easier than that. All of those are kind of controls that you force onto your life, where mindfulness is more about what is your experience right here, right now, exactly as it is. And let's explore that a bit with this raisin. I got these from Winco because they're yellow, and that's just a little different. So let's first of all and feel free to shout out the answers, but with the raisin in your hand, just use your eyes, and what do you see? What can you see? Wrinkles. What else do you see? Sparkles? Floss? Did someone say floss? The gloss. Yeah. A what? Oh, flaw. Yeah, the different flaws. What else can you notice? Some translucence, yeah. Enhanced, put up to the light. So is the gloss. So are the flaws. Mine has 3 stuck together and looks something like a Star Trek ship. What else can you see? There's a film, yeah. A seed, yeah, some sort of seedy thingy. I'm seeing that.
Just by looking at it, it looks sour.
The look of sourness. An irregular shape. Yes. Okay, we've shifted a bit. I heard pliable. This is information coming from your fingertips. Can you notice? You might even just close your eyes or not look. What are your fingertips telling you about the raisin?
Sticky.
Sticky, squishy, gross. What else? It looks like a booger. Okay, great. What else? Small. So size. Yeah.
It looks like a brain.
It also looks a bit like a brain. Is anyone else noticing like a relative comparison, like they're reminded of something from the raisin's look or feel? Boogers, more boogers.
Hey, you picked the raisin.
Yeah. Don't pick your nose. Looks like a piece of dog food. Okay. Okay. How about weight? There's a subtle sense of weight. Can you feel that?
Light. Very light.
Yeah. Okay. A lightness. How about this is not always as easy to detect, but a sense of temperature. The fingers can detect temperature. And it's relatively a similar temperature to my fingers, so it's not so obvious. How about smell? What is that like? It's not always easy to come up with words for aroma, but and it's Swedish? Swedish? Swedish. Scandinavian. What's that? Nondescript smell. Or absent. Is anyone sensing the absence of smell? Yeah. Yeah. Mine's subtly there, subtly raisiny. Yeah. Anything else? Here's one you probably haven't ever been invited to try. How about just rolling it slightly next to your ear? Or noticing anything? A squishy poppy? Yeah. Probably due to the film. Bit of a, like, Rice Krispies in milk. Okay, before we try the tasting, I have an inquiry. We can play with a reflection capacity of our mind. What do you suppose were some of the conditions required so that this comes into your fingers right now? Sunlight? Sunlight. So when we say sunlight, can you really just pause for a sec, look at this raisin, and feel into this factual relationship to the sun? Can you actually sense that? Not in some mystical way, but understand. Come to an understanding that sunlight was certainly required. Anything else? What else? Heat. Cool. In what sense? This itself is in a stage of death, and how else did death probably... It was plucked off, and where does organic nutrients come from? Soil, which is full of decomposing other organic substances. So can you see the end of life was certainly required for this, and this is somewhere near the end of its journey, near to transition. What else? What else? What other conditions were required for this to be in our hands? California. I remember that cartoon. It's just coming back to me right now. California sunshine. Okay. Now we've introduced the element of human involvement. Human involvement. Transportation. Can you kind of notice and understand that this thing in our hand most certainly required transportation? And can you almost sense the truck ride? Or from the plucking of the vine to, on the farmer's tractor to the plant, maybe the factory where it was processed or dried. And what other human involvement can you think about? The planter of the grapes. We're talking now, there's a time component here, not just from when it was harvested to now, but before that. Before that, this was required to be planted. What else? What conditions prior to its existence were required for its existence? Water. Carbon. Bees. Pollinators. Fertilizer. Other raisins. The parentage, the lineage of raisins, and before raisins, and before those, and before those. And suddenly we're tapped into a tapestry of organic evolution. At some point, there's some crossroads between our own evolutionary journey and this. What else? What other conditions? Can you think of other conditions? Someone sold it. Winco, thank you.
Someone bought it.
So I purchased it, and they're $2 each. So, just kidding. The packaging, yeah.
Labor, human labor.
Human labor.
Preserving the plant's existence.
The preservation of the plant's existence. Well, what exactly is this made of, by the way? Like, what's in this? What? Sugars, fructose, fibers, carbon atoms. And where does all that come from? Where does all that come from?
Between the soil and water.
Soil and water and the furnace of stars. That's not a joke, though. It is funny, but can you see this? This most certainly required at some point some cosmic something happening in the solar system. That's where this comes from, that's where this comes from, and this comes from, and all of this comes from. It's in our fingers here. Yeah. Any other ideas? Yeah.
Your mindful decision to purchase these and distribute them to us.
There you go. Yeah. That was this morning, by the way. Okay. So, if you're not a germaphobe and now you're a little worried that rolling it around in your fingertips is contaminated, well, that one's contaminated now, but still got one. It's interesting to pay attention to the process of eating, because there's a lot more going on than tastes, but pay attention to the taste. Both when you put it in your mouth, move it around a little bit, and then the taste after you chew. It can be fun to notice the before and after, what it tastes like before a chew and after a chew. But also, there's sounds happening, there's smells happening. The tongue is every bit as sensitive as your fingertips, if not more, to touch. So you might notice what it feels like compared to your fingers with your tongue. So if you're ready and willing, bon appetit. I noticed right away the temperature was way easier to detect than my fingertips. It was a bit cool. And someone was saying like squishiness, like that's much more apparent. Anybody else noticing things? Okay, so yeah, again, the tongue can really feel those textures. I haven't bit into my yet. Yeah, confirmed. Explosion of taste. What else? Yeah.
As you bite into it, it separates from the inside and the skin. It's like a separation.
There's a new thing. She's talking about the skin. She's noticed is torn away, and the flesh of the inside has a pronounced flavor and a different texture. Say that again? Similar to gelatin. Yeah.
Kind of seems a little bigger as your whole tongue and mouth are able to touch all of it at once.
Yeah, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, I'm noticing that too. Now that it's spread out throughout my mouth, it feels the size has increased from something small. Anything else?
Well, it's a feeling of pleasure, 'cause I like raisins.
All right, a sense of pleasure.
Sensing the submissage and the brutality of my teeth without reaction, I mean, without rebellion. It's an object they acted upon, not to act.
Okay, okay. He noticed that as he was chewing, that it submitted to the chews, and it didn't complain.
It also produces memory.
Wow, did anyone else have a memory? A memory that was sort of induced. Does anybody still have like a residue? Like the skin? Yeah?
For me, it's brought about like a awareness, consciousness of how much I have eaten even recently that I didn't pay attention to. I mean, it just went in, and like you said, you're still chewing yours. Mine was gone a long time ago. And how fast I eat my food and how little I observe anything to do with it.
Yeah. I'm noticing when I chew these little bits of skin, it almost has the sound of when you chomp into celery. And I'd never noticed that little sound. I've done this 50 times or more, by the way. Every time there's something new. That whole expansiveness, thank you. Anybody else notice something?
Just made my mouth produce a lot of saliva.
Oh, yeah.
So that was interesting because I'm really thirsty.
I am too. Could you give me a drink? No. Thanks. Anybody else? Oh, yeah. Has anyone noticed, like, the mouth chewing reflex is almost an automated program. The tongue knows how to, like, distribute to different, like, teeth for chomping, and then after you've chewed, if you check back in, your tongue is still looking for little bits in the molars and stuff. Anyone else doing that right now?
Notice that as you're saying things that I'm automatically doing them myself.
Yeah. Any other observations? A thought?
Raisins have never had so much attention.
Raisin, as far as among fruits, it seems to be one of the lower rungs of I guess, interest for a lot of us. And in fact, that raises the question, how did this raisin eating experience differ from other raisin eating experiences that you've had? Did anybody notice some differences?
Well, this one we were actually told to actually think about what's going on, while on a regular basis we just do it for nutritional value or to conquer our craving.
Oh, okay. So a lot of times you approach food or raisins through just an automated impulse or maybe there's a craving, or you're just eating automatically, and this is a little different.
I didn't gag like I did when I was a kid.
Great. We prevented a gag reflex over here.
I think I enjoyed this raisin way more than I expected to.
Oh, okay.
It was like
Yeah.
kind of surprising, like, oh, there are a lot, like I skipped things, I didn't realize I missed so many things.
Yeah. This woman has shared there was an elevated sense of joy in the experience. There's a spike in appreciation. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah?
I kept noticing that while I was holding the raisin while you were passing them all out, I had to keep reminding myself not to pop it in my mouth because I just normally do that when I have some food in my hand.
Yeah. Oh, food, eat, yeah. Yeah.
I enjoyed the experience because I hate raisins, but I was able to experience it through you guys like a sommelier or something. You're
Yeah.
describing the flavor to me, but I don't have to.
Right. Thank you. Yes.
I'm feeling robbed right now because I dropped my raisin on the floor. I feel like there's been this new invention of this food I've never tried before. Everybody else has had it, and I'm missing out.
Get this woman a raisin.
I know I had to eat something.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
You brought up the evolution concept, and my mind went back to the creation concept.
Yeah.
Christ and Adam were sent down here and placed seeds of every kind on the earth.
Right. So whether it's evolution or creation, and that's not a debate we want to get into, but however you're feeling, did you sense perhaps a connection back to that? Some sort of, the thing in your hand is definitely connected to something, a source. Yeah?
Brought me back to memory as a kid when I stuck raisins up my nose. I felt that.
A memory of stuffing raisins up the nose. Yeah. Go for it. I don't know.
I just had a thought, like, we're all holding a piece of history. We're seeing something that's processed, and that's in sort is history, and we're just seeing the final product of history.
Yeah.
And that's with everything that we see and wear and eat. We see like an evolution of what it once was to what it is now.
Did anyone notice me ever request? Make sure you feel some joy when you do this. Make sure you feel connection when you do this. Make sure when you do this, you increase the amount of appreciation for this object. It was never an explicit invitation. The invitation was simply to bring some of your presence to the experience of your life, specifically with a raisin. We didn't go out and acquire some external requirements for what happened. It was an inherent quality each one of us have brought to our direct experience. And that happened for some of us to experience a radically different relationship to eating one of the most overlooked of dried fruits, the raisin. Poor guy. And I hope you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Mindfulness, I like to tell people, it's not about changing your life. It's about a change in your relationship to your life. Leveraging the inherent power, the inherent quality of awareness, of your conscious awareness, the thing that is generating your experience right now. The thing that is making all of this real, we just brought it to a raisin and had a different kind of experience with it. And maybe if I can gently prod you to imagine what it might be like to turn this thing that we did with this raisin to your life, to the rich and complex relationship to all the different components of your life, including your challenges. If you can imagine what it might be like, rather than just relying, you know what we do with raisins, it's already been brought up, it's kind of like just an automated thing. And it can be very normal as humans to relate with our life in extreme automation, including our challenges. So, for example, if you weren't here when I started, I was prescribed mindfulness. It was prescribed to me. I was a student at BYU. I was stressed out of my mind. And they said, hey, why don't you go try this mindfulness stuff? It was a pilot program, and it was the first of its kind in the entire state of Utah. It was awesome. It was their psychotherapeutic clinic in the basement of the Wilk, and they started a pilot mindfulness program, and I was part of that. And I had also mentioned I thought it was a little weird, but I stuck with it. The wisdom acquired from mindfulness just starts coming from your own direct experience with it. And over time, it starts to just feel, I'm starting to see things a little bit differently. I'm starting to relate to things a little bit differently. And after a few years, I'm like, after a few months, I was like, man, this is special. After a few years, I was like, I'm floored about this. This is my primary interest. Relating to my life in a way that is similar to what we just had with this raisin. If you can kind of sense that. So here's an example. Right around the time, this is what brought me into therapy. This was a bishop's interview. After the interview, he puts his arm around me and he says, Dallin, you are such a good man. And I didn't say anything to him, but my full reaction to everything he says was an absolute rejection. No, I'm not a good person. I'm a bad person. That was my reaction. And it startled me because I was aware of this inner hatred for myself. And I had the strong sense, this is not healthy. There's something wrong with this position, and I might need to get some help. And that's what brought me into mindfulness. I went into mindfulness. The title of my course is, I See You, I Love You. I got this from my friend, he's a colleague that I work with. He has one of those like boxy Scion cars, with a huge square in the back of the car is just a giant square. And this isn't just a bumper sticker. it uses the whole square. And it says, I see you, I love you. And I just thought, that is the craziest bumper sticker I've ever seen. But it really feels like what mindfulness is boiled down to its essence. Okay. And by seeing, what that means to me is bringing your presence like we did with this raisin. And if you notice, I didn't say love the raisin. It just blooms. It just is very natural. When you bring your presence towards something, it can naturally shift the relationship to what you bring your presence toward in a direction of compassion, in a direction of loving kindness, in a direction of love. So now, fast forward, doing several years of mindfulness, I just remember this other singular event like this bishop's interview, maybe the inverse experience. And it was just, I was just getting ready in the morning, and there's the mirror, and I looked at my reflection, and I stopped, and I just gave it this goofy face, this big smile. And then it hit me. This is authentic. This is for you. This is my gesture of love and kindness to this. And it hit me, oh, wow, that's different from all those years ago where there was just this self-loathing to this self-love. And do you know what it was from? I saw myself. I saw the aspects of my life. I looked at the truth, the way things were, with non-judgment, with openness. And I didn't say, you need to change, you need to be fixed, there's something wrong with you. I said, I accept you the way you are. And here's what's counterintuitive with mindfulness. Somehow, that empowered me to make drastic changes in my life. And it was always weird because I almost fell off the stage. It was weird because the changes, they almost would just come right through. Like if there was something that was problematic, I would see that thing, and I would be like, yeah, you know what? You're welcome in my life. And when it would manifest, I'd be like, come, right now we're just driving to work. Come on, sit with me. The big thing that I dealt with was anxiety. Anxiety. Have you felt that? Anybody? It's just like, you know what it felt like? Have you ever taken a 9-volt battery and put it on your tongue? It felt like that mixed with maybe like a rag being wrung right here. I went everywhere with that. That was just, I don't know where I got that. Over time, it's just it turned into enemy number one to like this happy little Labrador who'd visit me all the time with his tongue out. And I'd be like, hey, old buddy, come on in. And it's just like, over time, I'd think like it'd be a couple weeks ago by, I'd be like, hey, where's anxiety? Where did that go? And it just slowly just dissolved. And that's how these transcendent moments always happened with mindfulness, was I would turn towards, feel this openness for it, and it would just either stay in my life as a welcome visitor, or it would go out the back door and it'd be like, where'd that thing go? You're welcome back anytime you want, but I see you, I love you. It really does kind of boil down the essence of mindfulness training. It's kind of like a lot of these awesome qualities that we've been taught our whole lives about the highest forms of human experience and qualities: love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, mercy. It's the application of that. It's giving you space to apply that to your life. Yeah? And it just, over time, I've felt like it's been a journey closer to me. I feel closer to who I am. I have handouts at the doors in case you're curious about mindfulness, in case this sounds like something interesting for you. There's plenty of resources in Salt Lake County, Utah County, Davis County, and online. I mentioned I teach something called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's an 8-week course. It's a great immersion into the practices. You'd be blown away at how simple the format is. 2 hours once a week for 8 weeks. And then there's a mini retreat on a Saturday, a 6-hour experience. I've graduated relatives, friends, lots of people from the community, lots of people with a whole variety of issues. Lots of people that come not because they're issues, because they're curious about their experience. This is the exploration of your experience as a human. Can you imagine just shining that interest we had on the raisin right onto your own life as it's happening? It's very illuminating and interesting. And I can't believe the things I discover on a daily basis about my experience that excites me and thrills me. That's the spiel. And I left plenty of time for any questions about the practice. If anybody has, what is mindfulness, or if this has brought any questions, yeah.
How does mindfulness help you deal with issues of like your past? Things that you feel like you've gotten over but always keep coming up and it's hard to get over?
Yeah, did everyone hear that? How does mindfulness help you deal with issues from your past? Okay? Well, this can be very applicable to what we've just done. Okay, imagine you have your fingers out, and instead of a raisin popping in your hand, something from your past is now present. And it's sort of hogging all the attention of the moment, and it's saying, hey, 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 there's an alarm bell around it. And maybe when you kind of notice it's in your fingers, the old automated you is like, go away. You're not welcome. I don't want you. And maybe those aren't working anymore. Maybe those automated coping mechanisms aren't working. So now it's time perhaps to try a little mindfulness and be like, you, the thing from my past, interesting. How do I experience, what is the experience of you? You know, we're bringing, what is it like to look at the raisin? What is it like to smell the raisin? What is it like to feel the raisin? What is it like, what is the experience of this past thing? How is it manifesting? Where is it in my body? What is it making me think? Perhaps what brought it here? And then maybe most importantly, can I approach these observations with non-judgment, without this covert agenda to get rid of it, to actually let yourself experience it? By the way, this suggestion is not some theory cooked up in some mindfulness lab. The suggestion to turn toward what is actually happening and validate that happening is simply an invitation to the truth and reality of your experience. What could be more sane? What could be more obvious about what ought to happen? It's weird we don't question the inverse. As why do we reject and resist reality? So quite often things will rise up, maybe from our past, maybe an anxious appointment in the future. Either way, it can be very normal to say, that's not happening. That's called suppression. Or it can be very normal to say, go away. That's called resistance or fighting. And it's very well intended that we have these tendencies, Something in our brain wants to cope with this and take care of this because maybe it's hurting. And maybe those coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. So here's this invitation, turning toward with openness.
I can see how that relates to rest and everyday things that you might, not be happy about. And I love that idea how you just said you welcome it into your life. Come on, let's go. With your anxiety and such. But things that are traumatizing,
Yeah.
are hurtful, and that your body and spirit knows are harming you. How can you just grab that and say, you're welcome in my life?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's a great point. How do you just grab a random stranger off the street and say, you're my best friend? It doesn't happen overnight. This is a process, and in fact, mindfulness might not be available in your situation. Maybe it's not the time in your life to turn towards. Maybe it's the time for some psychotherapy or something that is feeling a little more available. But if the challenge of what I'm presenting feels enticing, you might give it a shot. Because I don't know if you've heard this, I feel like this is probably the most powerful teaching that I've ever come across. It comes from the New Testament, and you might have heard of it. Love your enemies. Resist not evil. This is mindfulness right here. 101, to the core. This is it. It is to turn toward. Enemies is quite often this conception of another person that we are antagonistic towards. But maybe once you turn your attention inward, you might find that there's hosts of enemies right within our experience. And we're waging this eternal war on them. And that turning towards with this softening approach, it might be alleviating. It might not be the time, but also understanding this is just a bit of a process. Initially, what you might do is say, okay, I'm recognizing this really traumatizing issue. I'm going to recognize it just right out of the periphery, okay? You're going to be over there. I'm going to give you a little space in my life, but, you have that distance. And then it's just like, it's almost like feeding crumbs to a wild fox or something, and over time, you earn its trust. And that's what I was talking about, how like weeks later or years down the road, I'm like, where did anxiety go? You're welcome, but I miss you kind of. In fact, actually driving up here, I felt nervousness, and I'm like, here you are. You're with me, buddy. It was great.
So I thought you made a nice point there between creating therapy before you practice mindfulness. Is there a way, I'm an executive coach and I use this with some of my, I can't say I use it yet, but I'm pointing people towards it. How do I determine you're ready for this versus you're not?
Just a simple stress evaluation test. If it's too high and according to your professional judgment, yeah. Usually things like severe addiction, alcoholism, or it really, I think it would depend on your professional judgment.
I have a question that's more of just a comment off of one of the other questions that was made. I really think I love mindfulness. And what I've experienced is when you turn towards something, you're not accepting it as a good thing in your life, but you're just accepting it. You know it's there. You're not saying, oh yeah, I want this to happen to me. I want to be sad. But you're just accepting it and saying, this is here, and this is the root of it that I can deal with the cause.
Right. Okay. Up here in the front, she mentioned, and this is true. Thank you. We're not here. This isn't irresponsible optimism, where we're just like, oh, I've got all this trauma. This is awesome. I'm so happy. No, that's not at all what this is about. She mentioned the importance of recognition of reality, of what is here. It just so happens that the very thing within us that can recognize reality, inherently packaged within that light, are these qualities of openness and kindness. And that's where the exploration gets exciting. Because with opening the door of recognition, somehow, just like with the raisin, where there might have been all these years of prejudice of ruining cookies, you had a moment with it. So you might have had this trauma since childhood that you just wish was out of your life. But you bring this you-ness, this quality of your being, and initially recognizing, you might be excited to realize there's a spectrum opening up, the spectrum of human compassion that might become more and more available towards whatever you're relating it with. So this is all about relationality, developing new relationships. It's almost like you're making friends, a whole bunch of new friends from old visitors. Your body is one I've been completely surprised about. You know, my parents can attest to this. I was going from doctor to doctor. What's wrong with my stomach? There was something. They couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I'm Googling, incessantly, trying to find the cure for what's making all these problems. I had lower back surgery. I had migraine headaches. It wasn't a change in diet. It wasn't exercise. At least I'm feeling rather certain that what it was turning right toward bringing this light of my conscious awareness, the very core of me, and relating to my body and giving it attention, giving it my love, giving it my concern, forming this real relationship, because quite honestly, I'm fascinated with whatever this is. I love taking care of it, and I love embodying it. And it so happens, all of those symptoms are gone. And I feel younger than I ever have. And I don't want to now give you all these expectations, because once you put expectations on mindfulness, it's a corrosion of the entire thing. Because here we are arriving at the truth right now. And if we arrive at the truth and we say, hey, we want you different, can you see how there's a conflict there? So whatever you've heard, whatever study you've read or book you've read, or even what I might be giving you now, just take those expectations and put them on the back burner. They might come up, they may not. But what's important, you exist. You're right here. Your being is now. It's happening. Your mind can say there's something wrong with it, but the reality is it's shining, it's on, and it's available. Anything else?
How can someone who is addicted benefit from mindfulness?
Yeah, here we go. Rubber hitting the road. How does mindfulness help with addiction? And I really might just refer to the things I've been saying. Addiction is we've been talking a lot about reactive processes in your life. And addiction, that's just the word that describes reactive processes, especially when those reactive processes have become unhealthy or unskillful. So you might imagine if, there's the classic example of Newton's laws with the billiard balls, right? Just chain reactions, do. External stimulus, thought, feeling, impulse for behavior. You just did the whole thing like that. And you almost feel imprisoned in this chain of events. And this might feel like what addiction is. So with mindfulness, initially, it's not like, oh, now I'm going to use mindfulness and fix this. It's just, oh, oh, wow, I'm noticing the chain of events. I'm noticing what addiction feels like. I'm noticing how this is affecting my life. And then all of a sudden, the noticing begins to create little buffers in between these billiard balls. There's a billiard ball that's going here, and you're like, oh, I feel you wanting to go this way, but I feel another option. I feel another option here. Yeah, right now I'm feeling uncomfortable. All that anxiety, 9-volt battery, ooh, cake in the fridge. I need some cake. I binge watch Netflix. That's what it feels like, the anxiety. I need to cope with it. But wait a second, I'm feeling that. Oh, here's what it feels like. Ooh, I've got some space for that feeling. And I see that urgent impulse. But what's feeling skillful for me right now? I'm just going to relax here. I'm going to find a little lounge chair and sit with this experience and let myself, like you'd sit back and watch a thunderstorm. Wow, there's some chaos really happening in my life. And now suddenly, options open. Yeah. One huge misconception about mindfulness is it's just resignation. Oh, I just love my life. Whatever happens is fine. That's great. It couldn't be more opposite to me. I always give this example. I was at the Broadway just a few blocks down. It's my favorite theater. A few seats over, a lady starts filing her nails in the middle of the class. I'm in the middle of the movie. And it's loud, obviously. And so here I am. And I'm mindfully aware that there's a very distracting and annoying noise. It's like now there's a fork in my experience. Mindfulness has given me two options. One, I can sit here and enjoy the movie and at the same time work with this annoyance. Let myself feel annoyed and maybe increase the amount of tolerance for nail filing during movies. That's option A. Option B, I can tell her to stop without resistance. It just is something that needs to happen. It's obvious. It's part of the reality of the moment. I chose option B. I just said, could you please stop? I can't pay attention. Is that okay? And she stopped. Whereas before, pre-mindfulness, I just would have sat and boiled and boiled and boiled. And if I did tell her to stop, it would have been a reactive telling. It would have been, could you please stop? And it would have been motivated by emotion and anger, whereas this was motivated by intelligence. It was motivated by what the moment called for. And it felt just fine. I didn't have any I told her to stop, and then I just sat there, and I was okay. There wasn't this embarrassment or anger or I just continued watching the movie.
If I could comment on, I'm a recovering addict, and what I find mindfulness does for me is when a trigger hits, I can be just present with it as you were talking as though it were a friend, because it's going to happen. It's going to be there, even though a trigger, you don't really see it as a friend, but it's a reality, you acknowledge it, but then as you mentioned, you can allow it to just be, and I find that those triggers just disappear. You're kind of like, wow, this trigger was here 30 minutes ago, and I just realized now that it's gone now, and it didn't trigger any emotional reaction and the emotional path towards acting out,
Yeah.
which that trigger would have in the past. And so, to me, that's what mindfulness does. It allows me to be present with it without raising that emotion, without going into a state of judgment.
Yeah.
So it's another way of saying the same thing you just did.
And furthermore, maybe addiction has resulted in tremendous amounts of self-loathing or shame, which is where I found myself. Maybe starting right there is a great place. Let the addiction be over here, but there's something deeper that you could now have the opportunity to sit. What does that feel like to sit here with shame? What does it feel like? I mean, that might be pushing yourself into the deep end, but there's always this invitation. What's here in your experience? If training in mindfulness doesn't sound right for you, you don't need it. Like I said, it's just training wheels. You're already riding the bike of your life. So just turn a little bit of your curiosity, a little bit of your attention, openly, not with control, and allow yourself to experience what you're experiencing. Last question.
How much time do you find yourself giving to mindfulness when you're encompassing? I find when I am most reactive, especially when it has to do with my children, is that I don't find that I have a lot of time to come to, to get grasp on all this knowledge you're talking about. How when you flash through getting your bearings on things, how much time do you think it usually takes you to encounter instead of being reactive?
I'd take a few intro classes, and I'd maybe dedicate 20 minutes a day. But this whole thing is to move into a way of being. So I'm responding to that as though I feel like it's very easy to integrate this into every moment, where it's not like I'm doing mindfulness. Mindfulness engage. It is the way that you're living. And it's very fluid and very natural, even more natural than the previous way of living in automation. And that if it's not doing that for you, then something's off on the teaching. You don't want to carry the burden of a mindfulness technique. You want it to settle right into the way that you live. Okay?